What's going on, everybody? On YouTube, Steve here with Raiken Profit over at RaikenProfit.com. Coming back to you with another live show. Yes, I know we're having a lot of live shows lately, and the reason is because it's just so much fun. I love interacting with all these new people. You always learn something new, and there's just so much value given, not only to you guys, but for me, myself as well, to be 100% honest with you. I gained so much from these interviews. So we've got a special guest today. I'm not sure if you guys know who this gentleman is, but his name is Caleb Roth from thebookflipper.com. That's thebookflipper.com. And Caleb Roth has been selling books on Amazon FBA for quite a while. I don't know his exact story, but I do know that he has a background in finance and accounting, and I believe he worked for a Fortune 100 company before he went full-time into this business. Again, we're gonna chit chat with Caleb and get the actual story. But Caleb definitely knows a lot about Amazon FBA, specifically books, and even more, he is like a data junkie. Like he told me, he loves data, he loves analytics, he really likes diving down into the nitty-gritty stuff that, to be 100% honest with you, I'm really bad at. And I really am like excited to learn from him today, because he has a lot of the strengths that I consider weaknesses, and I think we're going to really all get a lot of value out of this show. So with that being said, Caleb, welcome to the show, and could you tell everybody a little bit about who you are, what you do, and maybe a little background story?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steve. Really excited to get in front of your audience and just provide value and hopefully introduce people to the world of book selling. It's nothing new. Everybody's out there, pitching books. They're easy, they're light, they're easy to find, etc. So it seems like everybody and their brother with a scanner and a smartphone's off looking for books, but there's very few people that really combine a business sense to what they're doing, and that's what really gets me excited. So I'm coming to you live from Denver, Colorado. I moved out here about 10 months ago. I love mountains and sunshine, and there's plenty of both out here. Kind of set up a little mobile office in my backyard, and it's about 75 degrees out today. So we ended up working out here with my wife today, working on the business and the blog, and just excited to welcome you here. So a little bit about my background. You're mostly right. I studied finance in college, graduated in 2010, so I'm just a youngin', and worked for Johnson & Johnson for 5 years doing marketing and sales training for them. So I used a lot of the data analysis within the marketing role, and it wasn't a typical marketing role. I worked in orthopedics, so hip and knee replacements, and it was really more of a product manager role, working with engineers, sales reps, doctors, and surgeons, and really making sure that we get good products that are useful into the marketplace. So a lot of data came from that. I became known as the spreadsheet guy at work. It was a lot of fun taking really complex ideas and trying to really simplify them and make it so people could understand. I worked in a very challenging piece of orthopedics. It was revisions for knee replacements. So I won't get into it, but long story short, if one goes bad or gets infected, we go in, rip it out, and replace it. And they can be very complex and costly and time-intense surgeries. And so we knew it made money, but no one really dove in and understood exactly how it worked. And so that was my challenge, to go in there and really simplify something that's complex. And I just loved it. I thrived on it and kind of developed a reputation at work for doing that. So I worked hard. I always wanted to work for myself, rather than working for the man. I think that's something anybody wants to do. And I was ready just to quit my job, walk away, and figure something else out. My wife said, "Well, prove it to me. Let's make sure this is something that works. I don't just want you quitting. It's going to be hard to replace that income." And I said, "Okay, that makes sense." And so we set out, and I knew about Amazon. I dabbled with it in the past. We can get into that too. My little brother's a programmer, and he's going to go work for Google here in the summer. Real sharp guy. He actually wrote a program back before smartphones existed that we could text an ISBN to an email address. So back with the flip phones, we didn't have a computer in your hands. You text the ISBN, and it would actually send it to Amazon, ping their API, grab the price and the rank, and text it back to your phone. So this is back before any scouting software existed. And if my brain had been thinking, I would have said, "Man, let's market this and sell this software." And I didn't even think about it. We just let it die and forgot about it. Several years later, we kind of got back into books, realized that, of course, with iPhones and everything else, you can basically find the information in a second. The software we had took about 15 seconds to go to Amazon, come back. And so it wasn't fast, but back then most books were worth money, and it just kind of worked out. So we didn't realize what we had. We kind of let it sit. I ended up working in corporate, really enjoyed it, and then said, all right, let's get off back on my own, and just kind of picked up where we left off. So I had the idea for books, and then just kind of, approached it again and said, all right, if we can do X amount of books a week, and we just kind of picked 100 books, it seemed like a good number. We like round numbers, right? So I said, let's do 100 books a week and just kind of map that out. So I put it in a spreadsheet, and I said, we'll sell 2 or 3% a week. I knew roughly what you'd sell based on my past experience. And if you just keep adding 100 books a week, where does that put you in 6 months and 9 months and a year from now? And just said, all right, based on what we're spending on books, it just basically built out a simple spreadsheet and said, well, the numbers look good. Let's see if this actually works. And so while I was still working the full-time job, my wife had a full-time job, we just started going to library sales on the weekends and thrift stores, and wherever we could track down books, we bought a couple storage units. I wouldn't recommend bulk, but some people thrive on it. So we got into doing books and really hit our goals, and we started growing it, and the numbers worked. It was one of those things, you draw the projections on the wall and you say, all right, in 3 months we'll be here. And 3 months later, sure enough, we were actually further along than we thought. And that's when the light bulb went off and said, hey, this is a feasible model. And we just kept pushing the gas pedal down until I was able to step away from my job about 6 or 8 months ago. Now, I've lost you, Steve. I don't hear the vocals coming through.
Sorry about that. I muted it for some reason. I'm sorry about that.
All right, fire away again.
Can you lip read? Did you know exactly what I said?
I have no idea, brother.
I'm just kidding. Now that would be a real skill right there. No.
Yeah.
So what I was saying was, excuse me, you took things slow, right? When you were thinking about the job, you were thinking about quitting your job, right? And what I was saying was, us guys, sometimes we get super excited and we just want to conquer the world, right? And we don't really think about everything, but the ladies kind of keep us level-headed.
Absolutely.
So you started off slow and you kind of broke down. You were like, all right, if I sell 2 to 3% of the books per week, I've got to get this much. And pretty much what you did was you said you kind of just broke it down and you slowly just started going to sales and buying more and more.
Exactly.
When did you said 6 months you finally were able to quit your job?
I've been doing the book thing full time for a little over a year, actually. So I started in September of 14 and was able to step away. We actually moved out to Denver to do orthopedic sales. So I kind of took that as an excuse to come out here. I'd always wanted to live here. Gave my wife and I a chance to start fresh, together. It was my friends back in Indiana, and she grew up in a little different area of Indiana and didn't know as many people because I went to college there. So it was a great chance for us to start fresh and have a safe job out here. Actually had negotiated with them, rather than a straight salary, we'd negotiated to work half-time so I could focus on the books part-time. So it was a perfect transition.
That's really cool, because I know there's a lot of people that are going to be watching this. It looks like we got about 46 people live right now. So I want to thank everybody for watching live. We appreciate that. But I know there's a lot of people who watch my videos who, they're working full time, right? And they're trying to figure out, how can I get out of this job? And maybe they don't, maybe they don't love the job. They want their freedom, right? They want to be able to do what they want when they want when they please. And they're just not sure if it's actually possible. I get people messaging me all the time, Caleb, asking, is it really possible to quit my job? Obviously, it's going to depend on how much income you have. If you got a family, I mean, if you're a single guy, it's probably going to be easier if you're not married with kids and all that. But it's definitely possible. And I'm just really happy to hear that, because, half the battle, right, is just knowing that it's possible. Have you ever had a struggle in your life where, it was more of just a challenge of believing it was actually possible, and then when you see someone who actually see someone who's doing it, or maybe you meet a mentor and you see that they've done it, you're like, wow, I could do this?
Oh, all the time. There's always excuses. You can always come up with a reason why you can't do something. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I can't handle the risk. Can't handle the stress. There's all these excuses. We just had a session this weekend we called those rackets. So it's the rackets you tell yourself that you don't believe that something is doable. And as soon as you tell yourself it's not possible, it's not possible. And I'm not trying to get all new agey and whatever, but if you see someone that's done it and you can map it out, come out with a plan, and then just go do it every day rather than just saying, well, I can't do it. You can really put some effort and really make some strides toward doing whatever goal that is.
So how far have you come now, Caleb, from thinking about quitting your job to starting up slow, breaking out the numbers, you started going to the sales, accumulating inventory. Where are you now in terms of, and if you don't want to share the specifics, that's fine. But like, how large is your inventory, and do you have any people working for you or anything like that? How's your business operating now, just to kind of give some context?
Yeah, and we were talking about this in the pre-show a little bit. One of the things I like about you, and one of the challenges as an entrepreneur, is that you got to figure out how to not trade your time for money. So if you think about it progressively, right? So I was working for a company, had a job, safe, secure job, supposedly, and that's great. And I want to get over here to freedom, right? So how do you get there? Well, you got to figure out, that path. And a piece of that is figuring out, hey, I'd rather work for myself than work for the man. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. But you get to that point, you build up your business, and we did our book business last year, my wife and I, and it was just the two of us for most of the year. We started bringing people on board throughout the year. We'll get to that in a minute. And we were just doing it ourselves. We built up our business to probably 3,000 or 4,000 books, and we're selling a good chunk to make some decent income. And again, we lived in Indiana. Cost of living is very cheap there. If we had stayed put, we could have made it work. Just the two of us working there, no problem. So then you wake up and you go, all right, I'm working for myself. This is great. And then you go, wait a minute, I still have a job. If I don't go in and find more books, eventually they're going to stop selling. And so I still have to trade my time for money.
That's how I feel right now.
Yeah. And it's good time. It's good money for the time. There's still flexibility. We went on a bike ride yesterday in the middle of the day, went and saw a friend play lacrosse. So there's some benefits to working for yourself. You get that freedom. But at the end of the day, if you stop working, if you stop trading that time, the money will eventually stop coming in as well. So then the challenge is, how do you take it one step further and say, all right, I'm not just going to work for myself and have a job. I'm going to create something that's got residual income. And that's really what we're trying to figure out right now.
Okay, and do you have any people working for you right now? I know we were chit-chatting about this a little bit before.
Yeah, we do. So the first one was my brother-in-law. He saw what we were doing with books, was looking for a little bit of a side hobby, a little bit of side income, and said, hey, I want to get into the books. I don't really have a lot of money to throw at it. Can we work something out where I buy books for you on commission or something? I said, sure. I've got spreadsheets. I can track what you send in. I'll teach you how to do it. I'll pay for your app, whatever it takes. And we actually worked out a deal where I buy his books, and then we split profits, or we kind of do a profit sharing agreement after stuff sells. So I'm essentially taking all the risk. He puts his time into it. And we just kind of started with that model. And then it got to be pretty cool because, we get another 100 or 200 books a month thrown into our inventory that we never touched. So we taught him our pricing philosophy, how to grade the books. And so he lists for us. They just go into our account, and then I have a system in place to track on the back ends. And all of a sudden we're getting extra books and extra money with not a lot of effort. So then the question is, all right, can we expand that further? And so what we've started to do, it's a small project right now, but we've got probably 8 or 10 people working for us in about 5 or 6 different states. And we basically teach them the model. They buy their own books. We weren't able to do that from a cash flow perspective. So they buy the books, they list them. We help teach them and train them everything they need to learn along the way. And then we run the business from there. So it's in FBA. Amazon's going to take care of most of it. There's not a lot of customer service, but we'll run the numbers. We'll pay them twice a month. We'll provide reports once a month to let them know how their business is doing, how it's growing. And then, we pay them a commission on what sells.
So just to stop you for a second, because I don't know if I fully understand you, Caleb. So you're hiring these people, obviously, I'm guessing, as 1099 contractors.
Right. Yep.
And we were talking before, you kind of run a similar model to Brian Young, who we've had on the show as well.
Yep.
And so you're hiring these 1099 contractors to go out sourcing books for you. And where I'm getting confused is you're saying that they're listing the books. Are you giving them access? Like, are you giving them like a special user access into your Amazon account?
Not that I don't trust them. I just don't want a lot of people poking around in my account. So we use a spreadsheet system to list our books. So we actually just set it up in Google Drive so we can see it live time as they're putting the books in. When they're done with it, they just email us and say, hey, I'm done with this batch. We'll just basically copy paste the document or export it as a text file. If you want to get specific, we can just upload it into our account, then send the labels to them, and then we'll send them the shipping labels too, and they'll just send it right to the warehouse.
Wow, that's a really interesting system right there. Holy mackerel. I'd like you to touch on that a little more if you could. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so again, we just cooked up a Google Drive document, nothing fancy, it's just a spreadsheet in the cloud. Sure. They put their books in. It's got a nice link, so you basically use a barcode scanner, put the barcode in there. You click over to the link, you kind of figure out where you want to price it. We use the Keepa charts that are embedded in Google Chrome. Mm-hmm. So they have an idea of how often the book is selling. We kind of teach them our pricing rules, and they condition their own books, price them, and then they just say, hey, I'm done. We then go in on the back end because we can see the same document on Google Drive, and we take that. My wife does it. She's great. So she'll take all the spreadsheets, upload them to Amazon. create a shipment, and email the labels over, and that's it.
Oh, okay. So you're okay. Now I follow exactly what you're doing there. Just so if everyone's watching, if you're a little confused, you're hiring them as a 1099 contractor, right? They're going
Yep.
out, they're getting all the books. They're actually listing the books, but they're not going directly into your Amazon account. You've created a system through Google Drive for them to scan it all in, and I'm assuming it has like the ASAN number with the price
Yep.
and everything.
Yep.
The spreadsheet gets your wife grabs it off of Google Drive because Google Drive you could share it with everybody. Your wife, you guys list it through your Amazon account, and then you send them over the PDF of the labels. They label it, they ship it out, and everything, and it's
Bingo.
in your account. And what we're gonna now this is interesting because you've actually created a tracking spreadsheet, and this is kind of how I heard about you, a tracking spreadsheet where you can hire people to do this for you. Hold on, let me take a step back. If I was to hire 7 or 8 people, I'd be like, where the heck, how am I going to know what John is selling? How am I going to know what Greg is selling? Like,
Yep.
it's going to be too much of a nightmare, right? Especially out of state. So can you touch on the tracking spreadsheet that you've created that allows you to know what people are selling so you can pay them out as a commission? Because you're paying them out commission wise, right? I know I'm
Correct.
getting too
Correct.
excited right now. I got to stop talking. Just
That's good.
take over the show, Caleb.
Yeah, so we do a commission model. Brian's model is $1 a book, and there's nothing wrong with that. People are happy to go out, buy books that meet his criteria, and then he pays them $1 on top of what their books cost. That's a great model. Sometimes I wish I could do that because I could pay people a lot less for the books. For me, I'd rather help people build a business. And so what I do is I take a 20% commission when the books sell. So if the books don't sell, I don't get paid. I cover the shipping cost to send to Amazon. They're only responsible for the cost of the books initially. So again, I'm trying to take some of that risk off their plate. Not everybody's an entrepreneur. It's hard for me to understand that because that's the way my mind works. And my wife constantly tells me, Caleb, people don't think like you do all the time. And so it's really fun to interact with other entrepreneurs and bounce ideas off them. But getting back to the tracking spreadsheet, it's something I built for myself. I wanted to know, hey, I went to this library sale last month. Did I make any money from it? I know I bought $2,000 worth of books from a list price standpoint, and I spent $200. But what's actually selling? And you don't really have any idea unless you're going to use some sort of accounting program. And Inventory Lab, I used them for a while. Their accounting wasn't great. So there wasn't a great way to track what's there. They're improving, but it's still not good. And so I said, you know what? I'm a spreadsheet guy. I'll just build out my own system. And so I built it out, and I've got all kinds of cool stuff. I share a lot of it on my blog. But the main thing as far as a consignment sale or commission model is that we track everybody. So if you were going to come work for us, we just put your name, all the SKUs would start with Raiken, then the date, and then the cost essentially. And so we just build it out that way. And every time something sells with your name on it, the spreadsheet catches it and says, hey, Steve sold 40 books last month for $700. After fees and commissions, you get X amount.
So your spreadsheet will actually break down how much you actually owe them minus all the picking, packing, the initial selling fees and all of that?
Yep. So it'll pull in Amazon's fees. I can set it up. I can reimburse myself like a per book fee if I want, or I can reimburse the actual shipping cost per book. And then I can set up any kind of commission. I can take a commission off the top. For me, it's 20%. I can sell on commission and take 50% of the net profit. So it's really flexible. I can set up whatever makes sense for me. A lot of times I'll sell books for friends at church or in the neighborhood, and we just say, hey, I'll sell it for you. I'll take half. They go, great. And and we'll set it up.
Now, how do you deal with returns and stuff when you're paying out commissions? Are you paying out monthly, did you say?
I pay out every other week. So just like if you had a regular job, you get paid, I pay on the 1st and the 15th of the month. Returns will just get factored back in. So if it's a return, the spreadsheet catches it, and it'll just take it out of sales essentially.
Oh, so it'll just take it out of the next week's paycheck for the sourcer?
I haven't been burned yet. I guess if someone didn't have a lot of books and maybe sold a $100 book and then it got returns, I might be negative for a little bit, but eventually it's going to sell again.
So just to break this down one more time, why would somebody, and I know you were mentioning before, not everybody's an entrepreneur, but if someone's actually going to go through the process of actually scanning the books, they know how to analyze it, the price and everything, why wouldn't they just ship it out and have it in their own inventory versus having you do that and taking that 20% cut? I know obviously there's risk of having the inventory in the warehouses and everything like that, and there's maybe more risk that I'm not aware of, Caleb, but what's the main reason why somebody would want to use that versus just doing it themselves?
To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. And that's something that we work with. And if people want to leave our model eventually, that's fine. We do pay for their scanning app. we basically loan them a scanner. It's ours, for tax purposes and whatever, but we basically give them the scanner. So we're basically providing their startup capital. They don't need it. We also pay for the shipping when the books go in. And if you're trying to build a big inventory early on, the shipping can really eat away your costs. You'll drop $100 on 100 books, and depending on where you live, you might drop another $30 or $40 to ship those to Amazon. So that's just, we eat those costs up front.
Yeah.
And again, we provide all the training. So not everybody's going to go out and figure out all the training and tools that are available. We're going to teach you how to understand rank. We're going to teach you which books to buy, where to find them. And some people really want that. They just want a very specific script and go here, do this. And that's great. We're happy to do it. If nobody wants to do it and they want to go start their own thing too, you can read my blog and go do it yourself, obviously.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more facets to a business than just, sending it in. Like, right, aren't there a lot of things that you have to manage for an Amazon business, like certain things you have to look out for and whatnot? I mean,
Yep.
It's, could you give some examples of other parts of the business that you're responsible for? Because,
Sure.
someone might just be looking like, oh, I should just do it myself. But what are the other things that people are responsible for when running an Amazon business?
Sure. Well, a lot of it is making sure there's so much talk about how to find books and how to send it into inventory. And then there's not a lot of information out there about how to get that book to actually sell. And a lot of that has to do with pricing it, how you condition it. Although I did a blog post today, and I don't think condition really plays a big role. I think books are commodities, and pricing it accurately does play a big role. Another thing is your seller ratings. So we've got 100% feedback. We've got a lot of reviews as well. And those things go a long way. So if someone's starting out and it says, hey, we just launched, versus someone that's got several hundred reviews and 100% feedback, who's the buyer going to trust more? So essentially, you're getting access to our brand name, if you want to call it that, from a franchise standpoint. And then one last thing that's important is Amazon's really, scrunching down right now, if that's a word, but they're really hammering down on the inventory limits.
Yeah.
So if you're a new seller, you only get 5,000 items. That's it. And in order to get that bumped up, some people have called in and had success. We were not able to do that. We had to essentially open a different account through my wife. We got permission to do that. I basically closed down my account. And we send in really well-moving books and basically you have to sell 8% a week for 9 consecutive weeks to get your limits raised. And you just keep doing that. So we were able to do that, kind of game the system, if you want to call it that, but really just get our inventory limits raised. So most people will cap out at 5,000. Which may sound like a lot, but if you get into this and really start doing 100 or 200 or 300 books a week, you can really cap out fast. We basically have no limitations anymore. We're up over 10 million. We're not going to hit that anytime soon.
That's interesting. So what you're saying is the average seller on Amazon is going to have a 5,000 cap limit of items that they could send in. And
Correct.
In order to get that limit raised, you're going to have to sell over 8% of your inventory
per week for 9 weeks in a row. And that's just not going to happen with books.
Yeah.
Even if you're really good about it and only send in stuff ranked less than 100,000, they're still not going to sell that fast. That's just the nature of the beast. Other products, you can do it. And I know Brian Young talks about, mixing in other products, even doing some retail arbitrage just to get your metrics up there so you can get your limits increased. I've heard of people just calling Amazon and being successful that way. We tried. We emailed, we called, we did everything we could think of. And we tried it multiple times. We didn't take no for an answer. And they kept saying, nope, we're not going to raise your limits. And so we ran into that early. And, you can make good money with 5,000 books in inventory, especially if they're the right 5,000.
Sure,
but it will limit your growth. And so we were able to get past that. And that's a big piece of, the ability for us to scale the business.
Yeah, that's definitely really interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that. I'm going to keep that on my radar as well. I might even try to give it a shot and call Amazon. I'm writing a note now to get my limits raised. But I want to take a second now to go into the comment section. It's about 9:25, so we're almost about at that 50% mark, and just want to thank everybody who's watching live right now. It looks like we've got about 71 people watching live right now. So if you're just coming to the show, we're actually interviewing Caleb Roth, who has a really cool blog called thebookflipper.com. And Caleb is also the founder of the tracking software that he's created, which allows Amazon sellers to really be able to track what items are selling, when they're selling. There's so much more that I can't even explain, and we could definitely talk about more. But again, Caleb is from thebookflipper.com. I want to ask you folks, if you are enjoying this show so far and you're finding value in this show, which I definitely am. I'm learning a lot, and I'm gonna be honest, man. I brought you on not only because I like you, because I really wanted to learn from you as well, and I know you've got a lot of awesome knowledge. So be sure to hit the like button, guys, right now. Show some love and support. It really helps us out. In the next few minutes, we're gonna start to kind of dive deeper into the specifics of book selling. So I've got my show notes right here. We're gonna be talking about what types of books to sell, sales rank, softwares, where to go to source books, and we've got a lot of stuff to cover. So we're going to start moving quick, Caleb, if that's all right with you, man. We're going to throw you on the hot seat
Let's do it.
and get into this and get into the meat and potatoes. But I just want to shout some people out in the comments section right now. I want to say hi to Swamp Picker. What's going on, man? Good to see you. We got Sons of Pokemon. Got a Pokemon master in the house. Dusty D, what is going on, Dusty? We've got the Come Up King from the Green Room. What's going on, man? Brian Huntsman, AD Bookseller. We got some booksellers in the house. Terry Gray, what's going on, Terry? Obama Loaf. We got Gersten. What's going on? Gersten from Miami is in the house. Misty Art IO. Polashek. We got Tom McCourt in the house asking a question. Is it a struggle focusing all your time on sourcing? Would it not be more cost-effective private labeling your own products? What are your thoughts on that, Caleb?
Yeah, potentially. And I've been tempted to go the private label route as well. I had my old manager at work, actually. Him and I got into the book business together. We kind of encouraged each other to bite the bullet and jump into FBA. And I haven't regretted that for a second. I was trying to merchant fulfill everything up front. And that's a terrible idea as far as scaling the business. So he's branched off into the private label world and been moderately successful. It's been fun to watch him. For me, I'm just having too much fun with books. I found lots of ways to scale it, both on Amazon and off Amazon. And until I stop having fun or stop making money, I'm just going to keep going that direction.
Yeah, also that comment, I'm looking at the comment Tom was saying, isn't it a struggle focusing all your time on sourcing? Well, what Caleb's actually created is a system to not have to spend his time sourcing, right? So if you guys are just coming in, Caleb was talking earlier how he actually hires 1099 contractors to go out and source for him. And you're probably thinking, well, if they're sourcing for him, how's he going to pay them? Is he going to go like the Brian Young route and pay $1 per book? No, he actually created a system where he pays a commission to the book sourcers that are out there. So he's not actually spending his time out there sourcing books. What he's probably spending his time on, I'm assuming, is hiring more sourcers and training them up, and then having that, I hate to throw out the word passive income, but it really is passive to an extent, because really what he's doing is he's training his book sources to go out there and buy more and more books, which he has taken a commission off of. And he's created a tracking software essentially that allows him to be able to, I don't know if is it a software or a spreadsheet?
It's just a spreadsheet. We'll probably make it web-based at some point. There's a lot of people that are just spreadsheet averse, or their eyes go cross-eyed when they look at spreadsheets. So at some point, we'll probably take it onto the web, but right now it's just a spreadsheet. So, you pay one time, it's yours for life, and you get all the updates. So there's some benefits there.
Exactly.
And spreadsheets is my language, so it was easy to build.
Yeah, so essentially you've built a spreadsheet that allows you to be able to track how to pay your sourcers. So what you really are doing is building a business, in my opinion, because Brian Young and Greg Murphy, they created the bus proof
business.
Academy or whatever it's called, but it's bus proof, because if you get hit by a bus, the business keeps running. And essentially you're kind of doing the same thing as well, right? If you, God forbid, right, if you were to get hit by a bus, I mean, fingers crossed, man, the business would still keep running, right? It would continue to run because your sourcers are out there and they're out there sourcing books for you, right? Where are they going to source books? Can we kind of transition into that? Where are you training your book sources to go and find books?
Well, obviously, you've got the low-hanging fruit of thrift stores, library sales. You can look on Craigslist. You can ask neighbors and friends to sell their books or get access to them that way. A really good way as well is just walking into used bookstores and asking them, what do you do with the books you can't sell? Do you sell online? And a lot of them are just opposed to selling online or haven't figured it out, or are just stuck in their ways. And that can be a really good way to pick up books from used bookstores. You can go to estate sales. I mean, everybody's got books. Garage sales is not the most efficient use of time, but if that's something you enjoy, you can find good books that way.
Killed it at the garage sales last week, Caleb. Oh my gosh! But keep going.
Yeah, and garage sales, you just ask them too. If there's a few books out there, ask them, hey, do you have any more books you want to sell? And half the time they'll go, yeah, I got a whole basement full of them, or a garage full of them. Yeah, and you're like, great. Let me take a look, and I'll take them off your hands. So most people view books as a commodity or a liability. They're heavy. They're done reading them. They don't need them anymore. And so if you come in and offer to take them off their hands and pay them a little bit of money, they'll usually go for it.
Really cool. We got Paul Rowley in the comments. What's going on, Paul? Thanks for coming in, hanging out with us for a little bit. Paul says, hi, watching from the UK. Caleb, man, we got people in the UK watching right now. That is
Sweet.
awesome.
And it's late there too.
Yeah, right. That's dedication, man. Paul is committed to success. Paul asks, any tips on how to get increased feedback volumes? As started FBA business around 4 months ago and going great, but feedback volumes are very low. So I think what he's asking is, how can you increase the amount of feedback that you receive on your account, Caleb?
That's a great question. The important thing is getting just enough so it doesn't say just launched anymore. I don't know how the UK people treat feedback. Here in the States, as far as books go, I don't really solicit feedback because the feedback reflects on me, but I don't have a private label product. So I don't read the reviews like a private labeler would. I do not email the customers. There's services that'll do that and try and say, hey,
Feedback
here's
Genius.
a tracking number. Yeah, Feedback 5 I think does it too. So there's software out there. I don't do it because I put myself in the customer's shoes and I say, hey, I don't want to get all these emails saying, hey, did you get my book? Whatever. I order thousands of books a month. I don't want to deal with those emails, and so they just annoy me. So I choose not to do it. You're welcome to do that, especially up front. I think it will help.
I don't think it's that big of a deal, though. I mean, especially, as your seller feedback, because there's two types of feedback. There's a seller feedback, and then there's the product feedback.
Correct. So the product feedback is irrelevant. As far as the books, I'm selling one-off books, and if they want to leave a review for the book, it doesn't affect its ability to sell, at least in my opinion. So the seller feedback is what's important to me, and then making sure it's all positive, so 4 and 5 stars. So if you need to do that early on, go for it. Email a few customers individually and say, hey, I'm starting a business. I'd really appreciate it if the book, met your expectations. Would you take a minute to help my business? I think people will respond favorably to that. For me, I don't use it, but that's a way to at least get the ball rolling.
I'd say worry more about the negative feedbacks and getting them removed from your account, right? And it's so easy, especially with books, man, to get negative feedbacks removed because it's like 99% of the time it's a product review on your seller account.
Yep. And you can just ask for it. Often Amazon, the bots will automatically remove the feedback.
Exactly. So if you guys are watching right now and, if you got 5 or 10 feedback, you should be fine, right? You should be fine. And it's going to come in naturally, organically, right? I've got about 40 something feedback, right? So I don't have a ton of feedback, but it's fine, right? It's
as long as it's 4 and 5 stars, it does what you need it to do.
And I'm at 100% feedback. The funny thing is, 7-8 months ago, because Caleb, I don't know if you know, but I come from an eBay world, so it was hard for me to make the transition over to Amazon, and I really just started hitting it hard about 6 to 8 months ago. But I didn't know that you could get negative feedback removed. I didn't know that there was a product feedback section, like for the product and for the actual seller. I kind of knew, but I just never connected the dots, right? But it's easy, guys. If you get negative feedback, get it removed. I would focus on that. Let's
and 2 other tips there real quick if you want to.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
If they mention price at all, so sometimes if you'll forget and leave the price tag sticker, they'll say, hey, I paid $40 for a $6 book. They can say that. If they mention price, that's an easy, Amazon will remove it for you. And because we're 100% FBA, if there's anything related to the fulfillment, hey, the book showed up late, hey, the book, the box was damaged, any of that, Amazon will remove that as well or take responsibility. So most of the big categories for why they'll leave bad feedback is, Amazon will take it away, no questions asked. It's really simple. So really the only one that's really in your court is just describing the book accurately. So, I mean, if you're missing stuff and saying it's like new and it's got markings all over it, that's your fault. You should take the negative feedback and learn and move on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We got a great question that came in from Chuck Carter. What's going on, Chuck? Thanks for watching. And this is actually a really, really good comment because I'll be 100% honest with you, man. Like, I love books. I make a lot of money from books, but sometimes I'm like, you know what? Like, is this thing really going to last, this book selling? Because I see so many booksellers come in all the time. And then I kind of go to the other side and I'm like, you know what? Not everyone's an entrepreneur. It's so easy to to start selling books, but to actually keep up with it is a whole nother thing. And to be able to actually turn it into a real business. So with that being said, Chuck asked, I'm seeing more new booksellers listing their books in Prime as a Prime seller at very low selling prices, which undercut many used book selling prices. And I've seen that too, Chuck. The question is, what is your strategy, Caleb, on dealing with this undercutting?
It's necessary. It's a free market. I think a lot of it is due to the fact that, one, it's new sellers that don't know what they're doing. Two, it's mega sellers that can, they can afford to make a quarter or 50 cents on a book, and it's all about volume. I'm talking about you, Jensen, online. And then some of it is just people with repricers that don't know how to use it. They're being impractical with it and not running a good, sound business, and they're just running the prices down. I don't think there's a big problem. Is it worse today than it was 6 months ago? Maybe, but I think it's one of those things that comes and goes. And for everybody that's getting into books and jumping in, they don't sell fast. The margins are great, sure. Books are everywhere, sure. But it's harder to find them, and more people get into it. And over time, it's just one of those fads. The good sellers and the ones that reinvent themselves and learn and really understand how to run a good business will survive. And the weekend warriors just trying to make a few bucks will get bored. The stuff doesn't sell, and they'll move on. So
that's why
I'm not worried about the.
Yeah, so many more employees. Keep going.
Sorry. I'm not worried about the market being overrun tomorrow.
Yep, I agree. I definitely agree.
But let me answer the second part of his question. What do I do with it? I don't try and beat them on price. I don't even use a repricer. We can get to that later. But I price where it should be priced, and it's fun. If you ever want just a fun experiment, go watch a book where there's some of these low price people in there, and just go back and watch it twice a day, for example, and just see what happens, which books are being bought. And if, let's say there's somebody, a low ball at $6, and then the rest of the prime prices are at $15, price yours at $14.95, match the $15, whatever your strategy is. Let the low ball sell out, and you'll get the sale eventually. And if not, maybe the prices do drop out as books become less popular, and that's okay. It's just a cost of doing business.
So, in a nutshell, what's your strategy for pricing books? I know that's like a really overarching question because there's so many different factors, but let's talk about something that people struggle with all the time. Let's say that you come across a book at, let's say it's over 1 million rank, right? Maybe over 2 million rank, and maybe the merchants are at $4, $5, $6, and there's no FBA sellers. And I just watched one of your videos on this, so I kind of already know what you're going to say. But what's your, a lot of people think because there's no FBA seller and merchants are at, $3 or $4, they can price it at $60 at a 5 million rank. I mean, what is your thought process on that? Is that right? Is that wrong? I mean, what's your opinion?
My opinion is that it's a lousy philosophy. So the way I take pricing, and I'll just give you my pricing rules in a nutshell. If Amazon's on the listing, that's my ceiling. I'm not going to price higher than them. You're not going to get it. If they're on it for $30 and it's selling a copy a month, I'm not going to price at $29 because someone's going to buy it from Amazon. So you got to take the historical sales into account. If the book is selling often, it's ranked 50,000, it's selling a couple copies a week or a couple a day, I can be aggressive with the price and either get close to Amazon or price 5 or 6 spots higher than the lowest FBA prices and wait for that price to count. Once the rank gets higher, so for me, once my threshold is 3 million, I'll still buy books after 3 million, but I'm not going to, and actually a good friend of mine gave me this terminology. He says, once you get north of 3 million, you've deleveraged the power of FBA.
Okay.
So if a book is selling for a penny, a prime buyer will pay $19. They will probably pay $25 in some cases, but I don't know if they're going to pay $50 or $60 if they can buy it merchant fulfilled for a penny. Some people love Prime. They're going to pay almost anything, but you got to just put yourself in the customer's shoes and say, hey, if I can get it for $4 delivered to my door, am I going to pay $60 to get it in 2 days? And some may, but I don't think very many would do that. So if the rank is phenomenal, if it's a 10,000 rank and there's no Prime people on the listing, sure, be aggressive, throw some random number and someone will probably pay it eventually. But if the book's not moving quickly, and once you get north of 3 million, that book hasn't sold in between 3 to 4 to 5 months, it's not likely to sell again in the near future. And so the next buyer that comes along, I want them to consider me, if not buy my offer. So if it's a $3 merchant fulfilled book, I'm actually not going to buy that book. My own rules, if it's a 3 million rank book, I need the lowest merchant fulfilled price to be close to 30 before I even think about it. 4 million rank book, I need to be close to $40. I somewhat ignore FBA, which is counterintuitive. I preach FBA, I love FBA. There's a lot of money to be made using FBA. But once you get to a higher rank, you need to be concerned about getting the next sale. So if it's priced at $30 merchant fulfilled on a 3 million rank book, I'll come in at 39 if I'm the only Prime. I'll come in reasonably close that someone goes, hey, I'll pay a couple extra dollars to get the benefit of Prime. but I'm not going to price that at $80. If it's a great rank and it's merchant fulfilled for 30, sure, I'll come in at 80, 90, 100 bucks because someone eventually will pay it. But I'm after the next seller once I get north of 3 million, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. Let's say that you come across a book that's under $1 million, because in my eyes, if a book's under $1 million, I think that's a good rank. Would you agree?
It's decent. Actually, I view anything above 100,000 up to $1 million as roughly the same.
Sure.
100,000 sold an hour ago, $1 million sold 4 or 5 days ago. So unless I look at the rank history and see how often it's sold, I kind of lump them together because I don't know when it's going to sell next.
So you're saying 100,000 ranks sold an hour ago?
Roughly. So if you take
roughly.
a 10 million rank book, and I'll watch books all the time just to get a feel, it's really how many books sold the last hour, and rank is updated typically every hour,
Okay.
although maybe not for every single book. If you take a 10 million rank book and it sells 1 copy, it'll drop down to between 100 and 200,000.
Really?
It will, but then it'll rise up quickly because sales rank just isn't most recent sale. It also factors in historical sales.
Okay.
We don't know how far back Amazon goes, but somehow in their algorithm they calculate it. So if you have a 2 million rank book that's sold 2 or 3 times in the last 3 months and it sells 1 copy, it'll also drop down to roughly 100,000, and it'll slowly work its way back up over time because it has some historical sales. Versus that 10 million rank book will drop down also to 100,000. But if you come back a week later, instead of being at $1 million, it'll probably be at 2 or 3 million.
Are there any softwares out there that you know of? And I feel like one of my buddies told me about this. It would be cool if there was a software out there where, you know how you scan it and it gives you the sales rank right now?
Yep.
I wish you could scan it and see, and I guess you could look at it with like camel and whatnot, but you could get like a quick bird's eye view of like what the rank was over like the last like couple months or something.
So FBA Scan will do that now. They'll actually show you, and that's the scouting app I use. They'll give you an average rank over the last month.
Huh. I just got FBA Scan. I didn't even know that was on it.
So you have to have the live version or kind of the unlimited scanning version to get that. And that's nice because you'll get a book that's ranked, 150,000, which just means it sold an hour ago, give or take, or it just recently sold. And it'll show you the average sales rank over the last month is 3 million. So you look at something like that and go, hey, it just sold the 1 copy it's going to sell, and maybe it'll sell again, but it's not as likely as a typical 100,000 rank book.
Wow.
I'd love it if someone went further, and you're not really supposed to track Amazon's data, so I don't know that someone will do this legally. I'd love it if someone wouldn't track the average sales rank, but they would actually be able to have an algorithm that said, hey, this book was at 100,000 today, 200,000 tomorrow, so it didn't sell, 300,000 the next day, it didn't sell, boom, now it's back at 100,000. So they would literally tell you the number of sales in the last 1 month, 3 months, 6 months. That to me would be much more useful and beneficial than an average rank.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's really cool right there. Awesome insight, Caleb. Let me ask you a question. If you get a book, let's just say, because I know you kind of lump 100,000 rank and 1 million kind of in the same category you were saying. If you get a book sub 1 million rank, what's your strategy in terms of pricing versus the competition? Are you always going to price? Now, obviously, you're going to probably, I'm assuming maybe not, you're going to price match, acceptable with acceptable or good with good, maybe not. But what's your take on pricing versus the competition? Say there's 15 sellers, sub 1 million rank, it's a good condition book. Are you going to be the lowest guy, or are you going to go second, third in line? What's your thought process on that?
It depends on a couple things. One, I'm going to look at the sales rank history. So if it's selling 1 copy a month, I'm going to price a lot more conservatively, as in, if the lowest prime price is $15, I'm probably going to match that and try and get the next sale. So I don't want to sit on the book for a year trying to get an extra $2 or $3 out of it. I'd rather turn it quickly and move on. The other thing I'll look at, let's say I get a 1 million ranked book and merchant fulfilled are on the listing for $10 and the lowest prime is 90. I don't think that's realistic. And so I'd come in, somewhere else where I thought that a real buyer would pay for it. And I might come in at $39 or $49. And it just depends on what I'm looking at in that particular book. Other than that, I traded stocks for a while, so I'm used to looking for resistance. So what I mean by that is if there's 5 prime sellers and one of them is at $9, the next one's at $10.50, and then it jumps up to 20, and there's like the next 3 offers are all at $20 or $21. I'm going to ignore the 2 outliers, provided that book is selling a couple copies, and I'll come in at $19.95 or match that 3rd lowest price. So in those cases, it makes sense to let the low ball, let the guys that are just going to sell it quickly, let them get out of the way, and position yourself to get that next sale eventually.
That's awesome. That's really cool right there. I've got a question that I'm curious about because this is one thing that I'm struggling with. I'm pricing books and they're not selling. And obviously, you know, books are long tail. Sometimes they could take 3, 4, 5 months to sell, if not longer. Um, how do you make sure that your inventory is turning? To go a step further, how are you monitoring your data, your items? To make sure that they're priced competitively, that they, you know, that you don't have so much dead stock in your inventory. What are your thoughts on like turning inventory over, and what's your like goal in terms of like how quickly you want to sell a book?
Yeah, it's a good question. Usually it's a mix of short and long tail. The most effective way I know to sell inventory is just to send new stuff in consistently.
Hmm.
If you're going to do, let's say, 100 books a week, and you just say, hey, I'm just going to wait and send my books in once a month and just do a big shipment all at once, I don't think that's the best philosophy for getting consistent sales. I think you should split that up and do 100 books a week and send in a weekly shipment. That's by far the most effective. I monitor my sales closely. I sell about 10% of the books I send in within 2 weeks. I sell
Okay.
about 20% of the books within 6 weeks. And then after that, it just slowly trickles up a percent or two a week until I get between 60 and 80%. That's what I roughly expect to sell. After the 6 week point, because it slows down, that's typically when I go in and reprice. And you can do that by pulling some different reports. You can pay for a repricing software. I would caution you with the repricing software, though. They're subject to pretty much the same limitations as anybody else with Amazon's API.
Hmm.
And so if you're out scouting, you know that just because an FBA offer doesn't show up on your app, doesn't mean there's any FBA offers. They're just not in the lowest 20. And so the app can't see them. The same problem is there as far as I know. Maybe I could be wrong here. But repricers can't necessarily see those lowest FBA offers. So I don't trust my inventory to repricers. I think it's foolish. And I think you're leaving a lot of money on the table.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Thanks for that response right there. I'm just taking a look at the comment section right now. Hattrick 1974 is in a house asking, have you ever run into fake college books? I actually just saw a video yesterday by, I forgot what his name is. I know his,
Jordan Malik put something up.
yeah, did you see it with the two
Yeah.
books that he was comparing? And I actually ended up looking up that book. It was ranked like 250 in books, which how many times do you think that book is selling at a 250 rank per day?
Several a day. Once a book gets down there, if it sells a couple, it roughly stays put. But it could be
Okay.
selling 5 a day, 10 a day, 20 a day. Who knows? But
Yeah, it's crazy. But he
I
put out a
think,
video showing the two, and one was fake supposedly. I don't know much about that book.
yeah, a big chunk of my business is textbooks, and I actually sell directly to college bookstores. And so I've been in the textbook game for pretty much as long as I've been selling on Amazon. I actually buy the books on Amazon and sell back to the universities and kind of undercut the wholesalers that are selling them the books. So I'm just a supplier for used textbooks. They give me their data. We've got some good software that goes and finds out what the books are worth on Amazon and other sites, and we buy them and essentially then ship them to the universities and pocket the difference.
Whoa, that's crazy right there. Holy mac! Is that something that's lucrative?
Oh yeah, and the margins are a lot smaller, but you've got to have some pretty advanced software to figure out what you're doing, and you have to have the relationships with these actual university bookstores. It's not something I talk about a whole lot. I prefer not to get into it too much. I don't want a lot of competition in that space.
Yeah,
But
I
all
get
that
it.
to say, my margins there are tiny. I'm not making what I do with regular books, but I have a guaranteed buyer for the book as long as it's in good enough shape. And so something like that's just another piece of the business. And we've outsourced that. We hire people to buy the books, to receive the books, check them, and send them in. And we're pretty much hands off with that side of the business now. But all that to say, there's a lot of fake books out there. And I didn't know about it until we started doing this business. And you start to recognize it. Of course, if it shows up from India via DHL mail, that's a pretty big red flag. But and I didn't watch Jordan's video. I just saw he posted it in several areas. But you're looking for thick, gloppy glue on the binding. If it looks like a 3-year-old kind of took a caulk gun and stuck the pages there, it's probably a fake. If you flip through the book and look at the page numbers, remember those little stick figure animation books that you did as a kid where you flip through it and the pictures move?
Mm-hmm.
If you flip through the book and the page numbers aren't all in the same spot, it's a really poor binding. It's probably a fake. And then the third one, which is weird, but if it smells like diesel fuel, if you smell that book, I don't know why it is. I think it's just the cheap machinery these guys are using. But if the book smells like diesel fuel, if the binding is gloppy, it's probably a fake book. And so when we get those, we just return them. That's the beauty of buying on Amazon. Amazon always sides with us as the customer. And so we're able to return those no problem. If the customer or the buyer, sorry, I'm the buyer. If the seller won't accept the return, we'll just file a claim, get our money back, and move on. So that's the beauty of buying books on Amazon. You're never going to get stuck holding any losses there.
Right. Yeah, you're
so
totally.
There are fake books. The average person probably can't spot it. You got to be in the industry to know it. If I find those, I'm not going to resell them. I don't want to get my account shut down, obviously.
Sure.
And I'm cautious with it, but they're out there. They're not super prevalent, and they're mostly soft covers. If you get a hardcover book, that's probably not a fake. They're just harder to set up and bind and do all that work involved.
Cool. Thanks for that response. I got a question for you in terms of pulling reports, right?
Yep.
I know a lot of sellers, including myself, we kind of get a little worked up in terms of pulling reports. It's a little overwhelming at times. What are the most common reports that you're going to pull, maybe on a monthly basis or maybe a quarterly basis, in terms of your Amazon account to be able to track whatever it is you're tracking?
Sure. So I just pull 2 reports. I try and keep it simple. The first is the payments report, and you can go under your payments and then a date range report. And then you can actually do a custom date range. So I'll just pull the last 2 weeks. I do this every 2 weeks to pay my people on commission. I just copy paste that data. I do the transaction view and just copy paste it into my spreadsheet, and my spreadsheet spits everything else out from there because that's all the individual transaction data. If you don't want that, you can just click what's called the summary view, and it'll show you for the last month or day or 2 weeks. It'll show you what your sales are, what your returns are, what was damaged in the warehouse, all those things that kind of factor in. And it'll give you that information to help you understand, all right, here's my top line, and roughly here's what Amazon's taking, here's my bottom line. So those are great reports to pull just to have an idea, because too often we get focused on sales. Hey, I sold 6 figures last year, that's great. Okay, but what was your margin? What was your profit? My average book goes between $18 and $20, and Amazon's taking roughly 40% by the time I factor in inbound shipping, storage fees, FBA fees, pick, pack, and ship fees, and then outbound shipping. By the time all that's factored in, 40% of my sales are gone before you even factor in the cost of goods. And so just understanding that at a margin, those reports will help you do that. So that's the first report. The second is the inventory health report. That's a little bit harder to find. I've got some videos on my YouTube channel of how to find that. And I didn't know this one existed until just recently when I was trying to take advantage of Amazon's free offer to dispose of your slow-moving inventory in April.
You made a great video about that.
Yeah, so if you pull up that video, it'll show you where to pull that report. The thing that I like about that report is it shows you everything you have currently in your FBA inventory. It'll show you the current sales rank, the category, and then it'll even give you the merchant fulfilled, used and new lowest price, and the prime used and new lowest price, which is the only place I believe that you can actually get the lowest prime offer 100% guaranteed. Now, these reports are usually delayed 24 hours to 2 or 3 days, so it's not super accurate, but if you want to get an idea of, hey, you can sort it by rank then and say, hey, I've got some books now over 10 million. The lowest merchant fulfilled price is $3. I wouldn't have bought that today knowing what I know. It's time to pay to get it disposed of rather than keep letting it sit around because it's not going to sell. And if it does, I'm not going to get much money out of it.
Yeah, I'll be sure to link that up in the description area for anybody who's interested in watching that video. So you could figure out how to find that inventory health report, which I actually went through your video step by step to do that, and it was actually very useful. It's a really cool report. You just pull that up on Excel, and it's got a lot of cool analytics on it. I got another question in terms of reports. Obviously, we just went past that. Everyone just got done paying their taxes, hopefully, right? And I get a lot of questions in terms of, how do I find my pull the reports to find like my total gross sales, like all my expenses. I got to get it all to my accountant. How do you go about that in terms of like when it's time to pay taxes and everything? Where do you go for your reports? How do you download it? How do you decipher it and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you pull that same report, that payment report from Amazon, you're only going to get limited data. You're going to get your gross line, top line sales. You'll get all of Amazon's fees, and all your shipping expenses will be factored in there as well. And that's it. So you'll get a kind of an operating profit or operating margin, give or take. But then you need to go take out your overhead. So you got to figure out your mileage. I use Mile IQ on my phone. It tracks every drive I take. I think it's fundamental, and it's not terribly expensive. And it'll make sure that I deduct every mile I get when I'm out sourcing books or picking up supplies. Mileage deduction is huge. It's a non-cash deduction. So you get like 55 cents a mile, and it doesn't cost you that unless you're driving a Hummer. So other than that, you do need to be tracking your book cost because Amazon doesn't know what your costs are. They could easily add a section. You could put that in, and they could really build out an accounting system, but they haven't. So you really got to find some sort of either a spreadsheet if you're good with those. You can use my tracking spreadsheet. I've got spots to check your supplies, what you're spending on books. It tracks cost of goods sold, all that stuff that your accountant will want. If you don't want to use that, you can use Wave Apps. That's a free, it's actually dual entry accounting, which sounds intimidating, but it's not that complex. It'll pull in reports from your bank. So if you have a separate bank account for your business, which you should, that'll pull in everything else. So all of your, if you got your cell phone bill on there, your internet, or the books, or whatever you're buying from retail arbitrage, put that all in the same account. That'll pull it in there for you, and that'll get most of your other expenses. And then if you throw mileage into that, that's typically what your accountant will want to see.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that tip right there. I know a lot of people watching are kind of curious how to go about that. So definitely make sure to pull that payments report and check that out. Also, another one that I've used in the past and I still use to date, I also use some spreadsheets as well, is GoDaddy Bookkeeping.
Yep,
So I
I've
don't
heard
know
good things about them.
Yep. So GoDaddy will actually pull certain pieces of information as well. So that's another software. It looks like we're at about 6:57 right now, Caleb. So we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to ask everybody right now, if you have any questions, leave a comment below. Also, be sure to hit that like button, show some love, let us know that we're doing a good job. We've got about 72 people in the comment section. So we're going to answer a few more questions, and the show's about to be over in about 3 minutes. So let me see what's going on in the comment section right now. Brian Huntsman is asking, do all your employees use the same scanning software? And I'm going to go a step further and ask you, what setup do you hook them up with in terms of, is it a PDA scanner? What scanning software and any other equipment you have your sourcers out there working with?
Yeah, good question. There's a lot of good softwares out there, but I would highly recommend a downloaded database. It's fast, it's accurate. You're going to find yourself in basements without access to internet or cell phone, and you really need to have a downloaded database. So you can do the PDAs. We just use their smartphones, and we use the Opticon OPN 2002 barcode scanner.
Mm-hmm.
And we use FBA Scan is the actual app that we use, and it does a great job.
Awesome. Yeah, I wish that I would have gotten started with FBA Scan a long time ago, because I can't tell you, Caleb, how many times I went into a thrift store. I was just on a 90-day trip across the country, and there were several thrift stores that were just amazing, man. I mean, you walk in there and you're like, nobody's touched these books. Like, they're just kind of out in the middle of nowhere, but the internet wouldn't work. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I know I'm losing hundreds of dollars right now. I just knew it, and there was nothing I could do. I took a risk on a few of them, but having that downloadable database is key, guys. And essentially what you're doing is when you're at your house or you're on Wi-Fi, you download the Amazon database to your actual phone, so it has all the history and the prices and ranks and all that stuff. And when you go out, you could actually, FBA Scan has a live version where you can use the internet, right? And then there's a offline mode as well, so you don't have to rely on the internet, which is key, and it allows you to scan faster as well, right, without having to access the API every time.
It does. Yeah, if you're serious about book selling, you need a downloaded database.
Awesome. So if you guys want to learn more about Caleb Roth, you can go check him out at thebookflipper.com. That's his blog. And I've been checking out lately, guys. There's some really good content over there, right? It's not these little posts with a few little tidbits of information. It's really in-depth articles and blog posts, just really good stuff over there. So if you're interested in books, or if you're a data junkie, or you want to learn more about reports and all that good stuff, go check out Caleb Roth's blog at thebookflipper.com. 100% free. A lot of free information over there. Also, he has he has a listing spreadsheet over there and a tracking spreadsheet as well, if you're interested in scaling your business, hiring 1099 contractors, or just figuring out how to get people on your team. Check out those spreadsheets that he has over there. Is there anything else that you'd like to say before we head out? I appreciate you coming on for an hour. It's been a lot of fun, and it's just, these are the types of videos that I'm gonna have to watch 2 to 3 times.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege to get in front of your audience, and hopefully it'll get a lot of people interested, both in Amazon and as well as books as well. Books aren't dead. They're making a good comeback, and they're still selling well. Just a couple of quick tips. You don't need all the fancy tools, bells and whistles to get started. Get your smartphone, use the Amazon seller app. And if you want to just see if it's right for you, get out there and start dabbling. There's, you can sit there and get paralysis by analysis and just, hey, I'll never be able to figure it out. Just get out there, see what you can learn. One big tip, be sure you understand what the fees are going to be. If you're selling $8 books, it might sound nice. You pick it up for 50 cents and sell it for $8, but you better figure out how much Amazon's taking out of there, because you're not going to walk away with $8. You're going to walk away with 2 or 3 or 4. So make sure you understand your margins going in, and then just be consistent. You can find $2,000 worth of books, send them in week 1, and sell a good chunk. And then if you don't send any new inventory in, your business will fizzle out, and you'll wonder what's happening. And that's just the nature of books. So if you're serious about it, pick a number, even if it's 25 bucks a week, and go do that consistently. And I think you'll be surprised at what you're able to grow.
Yeah, you're totally right. My mother, she started about 2 years ago, and she sends in not much, right? She doesn't send in much, maybe 30 books a week, maybe a little less, sometimes a little more. And her sales are consistent. You know, she's bringing in a couple $1,000s per month, right? In gross sales, and she's making a little extra side cash. So you guys don't have to go balls to the walls sending in 1,000 books per week. You could start small, but like Caleb says, be consistent. I'm 100% certain that what he's saying is correct, because I've been doing that. When I send stuff in, I make more sales, I make more money. When I stop sending stuff in, I don't know what happens, but things just die out. So you have to be consistent, guys. But there's money to be made out there, and super grateful for you to come on the show today, Caleb. And I hope that everyone watching got a lot of value. So if you guys did get value in this show, be sure to hit the like button, leave a comment below. If you have any more questions, leave them in the comment section, and we'll try to get to them after the show possibly and answer them for you. Also, check out Caleb Roth's blog at thebookflipper.com. And until next time, we will see you in the next live show. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for coming on, Caleb.
Yep. Have a good night.
See you guys.